I'd like to call to order the Town Commission regular meeting of October 11th, 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Town Clerk, please call the roll.
Mayor Tompeck,
Here.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Here.
Commissioner Fender, Commissioner Mayfield.
Here.
Okay, we have no proclamations or presentations. That brings us up to public comment on non-agenda items. First up is Amy Hammis.
Yeah. I just wanted to remind everybody, I work at, oh, I'm sorry, I don't know this will work. I work at Premier Realty Group across the street, and we're doing our 33rd annual family costume contest. So I just wanted to remind the residents of Sewalls Point, yes, exactly, to please participate. All ages, if the grandparents want to dress up, if parents, remind your grandkids. We have 5 prizes going out. Prizes are worth about $500, so yeah, it should be fun. That's all.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ronnie Piccolo.
Last time I spoke, I'm Ronnie Piccolo, I live on Lucindia. Last time I spoke, it was really, I was inarticulate about how I wanted to make a point. Today I want to make that point again. I was quoted in the press accurately, but not for the point that I was trying to make. The only reason why we are dealing with the sewer issue is because the Sewalls Point Commission, at least 4 years ago, decided they wanted to raise their hand and say Sewalls Point wants a sewer. Bottom line, it was not the state, it was not Martin County Commission, it was not Martin County Utilities that said Sewalls Point should be dealing with this issue. We are in control of our own destiny. If we stop talking about this, it will go away. You people, take that back. The commission is literally pushing this agenda when we do not have to move forward with this. The bottom line is, sometime down the road, Martin County Utilities and Martin County Commissioners will offer us the opportunity to have the process of a sewer, but it is still in your hands. We are an entity of our own. I am preaching to the choir. You guys know this. We are an entity of our own. No one can tell us that we have a mandatory sewer except the state, and the state has no interest in doing that. I am really addressing not you, I am addressing the people who are watching at home and the people in the audience. Do not believe me that we are in control of our own destiny. Call Martin County Utilities. Speak to Sam Amerson, and I will give you his phone number, 223-7942. Ask him if what I'm saying is not true. We are dividing the town over an issue that really is in the control of 5 residents. Not right. Thank you.
Thanks, Ron.
I have a comment sheet for Tony Lagana. Do you want to talk now or when we go over the grant?
I'm not really sure.
Well, why don't you come on up?
My name is Tony Lagana. In light of the devastation caused by Hurricane Ian, I propose the people of Sewalls Point, represented by our town commission, recall all present grant applications and suspend applying for grants for 1 year so that those grant funds can be used by the state of Florida to help rebuild the infrastructure of the towns on our west coast, which were affected. Wouldn't it be wonderful to have our mayor present this to our governor and perhaps start a trend amongst towns that had minimal or no damage? And with all due respect to the work in preparing proposals for our town, the lobbying firms that presented proposals can for the next year turn their talents to helping those towns most affected. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Okay, that brings us to item 4, additions, deletions, or changes to the agenda.
Yes, I have a suggestion, if it would be pleasing to the other commissioners, that let me look at item number 12B, be moved up to 6C. In order to accommodate the schedule of our grant writer, who's got a medical emergency of a family member.
I'll second it.
Okay, so there's a motion to approve the agenda with the modification of moving 12B to 6C.
Yes.
But not part of the consent agenda, correct?
Right.
Right.
Please call the roll.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Yes.
Commissioner Fender. Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck.
Yes, consent agenda.
Move approval of the consent agenda, which is 12A and 12B.
Second?
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender. Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yes.
Okay, so that brings us to new 6C, which is a town lobbyist. And Mr. Daniels, why don't you go ahead and introduce this item?
Yes. When I started going through the budget process that Mr. Hudson had completed, there was allocations in there for a lobbyist. I guess there was discussions amongst the commission, and I know I was in attendance during some of those discussions of setting $60,000 aside for lobbying / grant preparation. So we already had a quote from our current grant writer, and there wasn't really another side to it. So just so you could have some information from another lobbying firm before you made your decision, I contacted one that I dealt with in the past that I knew had an office up in Tallahassee and was very involved in lobbying. Again, not to take anything away from Chloe and her lobbying efforts or her working with the grants, but I just wanted to have, two different versions so you all can make an informed decision on which way you wanted to go. So currently, under the one proposal that Chloe has, and I'll let her come up if she wants to and speak on behalf of her firm and her proposal, it covers all the lobbying services for a year and all the grant writing services for a year. Did I say that correctly? Did you want to come up?
Good evening, Commission, Mayor. So my name is Chloe Sewalls. I work with Gallo Pavo, and the proposal that I submitted back this summer, it covers grant writing. So as long as we keep finding grants, we can keep applying for those grants for our different various projects. It covers a lobbying effort so that we can be competitive when it comes to the legislature's appropriations process. And I'm also able to do projects as needed when they come to public relations, similar to the ribbon cutting that we had this summer, where I assisted you all with handling the guest list, the invitations, and getting our deputy secretary from DEP in attendance and seeing the project. So similar things to that. So kind of a 3 big umbrella approach is what I put forward for you all.
Great. Thank you. I think it's important to realize that to accomplish any of the projects that we need, we can't afford to go it alone, and that's why we've done the grant process that we've had, and it's the importance behind the sea level rise preparation and some of the other projects that we've done on rebuilding roadways. Obviously, the more of those roads that we get completed and work on, and no matter what happens in the future, we have still 2 more phases after phase 3 towards the roadway projects, and then also whatever we want to do on South River Road to handle that problem, which is part of our capital improvement project. So I just wanted to bring it forward to you, the lobbying side of it. The legislature starts in March, and the committees will start meeting in December and November. December and January, I'm sorry. And November is really the key time of getting a legislative agenda together on what the commission wants to do, what we want to look for, and by way of appropriations or any other issues that are affect us on a statewide basis. And I'll leave it for discuss. Oh, one other thing, the other firm that I contacted did supply a proposal. They are a statewide organization. They know our local representatives here. But in the essence of time, I kind of put this on the agenda when I saw we didn't have a lot of things coming on the agenda, and I know it was important to get it moving forward. So I did not invite them to come in. They weren't aware that it was coming on tonight's agenda, but if that's something that you would like to see, we can always invite them in for the second meeting this month. Now I'm done.
Any questions or comments? I guess I have a couple of questions. Number one, do we currently have any kind of a contract with anybody for developing grants right now, other than through CapTech?
Just through CapTech that I'm aware of and the grant writers that they employ.
Okay. And I'll mention it for the 40th time. I'm apoplectic that we can't get a list of the potential grants that are out there. I mean, for God's sakes. I am not going to approve anything. Sorry, it's my opinion that we shouldn't be approving anything when we don't know what kind of grants are out there and which kind of ones we're going to want to go after. Appropriations, all those kind of things are important, and I don't have any idea what we're looking at. And I don't want to find out on a Friday that it has to go out Friday afternoon. Vice Mayor Kurtzman.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of what you just said. I'd be interested in seeing what grants are out there. I'm unaware of what's available, what could benefit the town, the taxpayers. I also feel that the current grant writer we have has done a great job. The only thing I would ask for is advance notice, whatever is out there that you think could benefit us. I would love to see a list. If you think certain grants would be a good fit for our town, please forward them to us, and we'd love to see what's available. Then we could discuss it at an upcoming meeting. There's a lot that needs to be done in our infrastructure with flooding, so that would be greatly appreciated. And I'm sure there's other things too, if there's certain grants that can benefit us, and our staff or whatever it might be. I'm definitely interested in seeing that. I'm done.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. When I look at the memo, the second shoemaker is for lobbyist services, and the first one is for grant writing and lobbyist. So just an effort to really compare the costs. Can you break down, I don't know if that's a question for Chloe, kind of estimate what is lobbying, what's grant amongst is that okay if I? Because town manager, correct, the shoemaker one is not for grant writing, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
So I think it might be a little bit of helpful too to give some background on how I all came to work for you guys. So Michelle Berger, when she was our town manager, she had a vision, obviously, that grants are a huge thing that the town needs to go after in order to supplement this extremely fiscally conservative budget. And so I put in a proposal for grant writing specifically. And I know that there were a few other really large firms that were also competing to be y'all's grant writer. And I remember it was really hard because the numbers were just not there for the budget. And so the one grant that I all wrote for you last year, it was that coastal resiliency grant. And I remember a week before it was due, I came in and I said, are you all writing for this? Because I knew I hadn't been recruited with any projects yet. And she said, no, I can't get a number worked out. And I said, give me a shot and I'll do it. She goes, you can do this in a week? And I said, absolutely. And so I met with our town engineer and I had a tour of the town within the week and I packaged it together. And in 1 week's time, we submitted it, and I ended up having a makeshift meeting with DEP staff, which was honestly the separator, where the staff themselves was not aware that the peninsula was not in the Basin Management Action Plan to the right degree. So they were never allowing us to be eligible for certain funds because they thought we were eligible for all these other funds that we're not. So that differentiator there, I think, is what opened DEP's eyes, and with one grant, you all were able to receive $3.5 million for your South Sewalls Point project. And so moving forward, I have been on a weird basis because we had a bunch of ships where I have never really been assigned certain projects. So this summer, I worked with Dan Hudson to come up with a couple new projects. And I know with Mr. Daniels, we've been in discussion on some new projects. So I completely see, absolutely, we need to have a timeline. We need to project outward. I think going back to what your question was, is that structure would allow me in a month span to be at the whim of the town with a cohesive measure. So when session hits, it's a 50, 60-hour week, right? Where you're running around doing all kinds of things, looking out for the town, trying to figure out what, not just appropriations projects for the funding that we need, but also policy measures, starting to exercise. We have some of the most precious natural resources here, and there's a ton of policy around it. And there's a policy about septic to sewer, and there's policies about resiliency. And you all deserve to have an input in that. So that would be the lobby arm. And so the committee weeks leading up, as well as the actual legislative session, I would be committed to you all in a lobbying advocacy effort on not just the legislature side, but also the state agency side. Then when it comes to grants, we would need to project, obviously, what is out there. I know I put together a list of some of the parks grants that are available, and we started to have conversation on some of our public safety projects. And so I'm starting to learn your projects. I've become very well versed in your coastal resiliency issues, and now I'm starting to understand all the different facets of the town. And I think that's with the help of staff assisting me on learning what you all need. And not just what I know. So that would be the two arms. So when sessions geared heavy, we would be doing regular weekly reports, so you all know exactly what's going on. Regular meetings, if you all are in town too, I would help facilitate those. Keeping a strong relationship with our legislative delegation. And then the grants would be, as grants come up, we would just be putting in for them, seeing what we can do to leverage the least amount of match with the amount of funding that's available, especially for a town situated the way you all are, is on the coast with severe resiliency needs, and there's dollars and cents out there. So I hope I answered your question and gave a little bit more background, because I really truly don't want you to feel as if there is no possibility of an organizational, cohesive, timely flow, because I hear what you're saying and I agree completely, and I think that just takes a little bit more communication and some structure in the contract.
Do you have any representation in Tallahassee?
Representation in Tallahassee, how do you mean?
Well, do you have somebody that's stationed in Tallahassee, or?
So I would be there regularly. I'm very familiar with Tallahassee. I think it's going on, I want to say it's 10, but it might be 11 years that I have legislative experience, the state Senate and the state House, as well as 5 years in local government. And I have a strong relationship specifically with the Department of Environmental Protection. In the last 3 months, I've been able to foster a couple relationships with the Department of Economic Opportunity. So I would be your boots on the ground person.
Can I ask?
Sure.
Kind of just following up with what he was going to say, I was going to ask the same question that, I'm under the impression that to increase, chances of getting grants and the appropriations requests, you kind of have to know the inner workings and the relationships with the legislators, and as you said, the agencies, specifically the committees, different committees, depending what the project is. Would you say that you have those relationships?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, I absolutely would confidently say I would be able to facilitate any kind of dialogue between the committees. They shift, but there's usually a trend in who heads the committees. And so I do have 10 years worth of history. And we obviously get new legislators every couple of years with reelection. And so I would continue to foster those relationships, but yes.
Okay, thank you.
So it's the pleasure of the commission. I'll be honest with you, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know how to work this thing, because I got one, which is a retainer for grant writing and lobbyist services. The other one's just for lobbyist services. I looked through that, and it looked fairly comprehensive, but then we'd have to see if we get somebody for grant writing. So I don't know how to, make a decision on this with the information we currently have on hand. Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, I share your complex puzzle that you've got. I think I'd like to ask the mayor to define what you would like to see as far as the list of funding sources, because I think that might be getting in our way of the next step. In sales, as you do a great job, you get a higher rate of pay. You can't do that in grant writing. You can't do that in fundraising. You can't do that in not-for-profits. So merely from the great story that we just heard from Chloe on, the step that we're doing at the road, I'd almost like to give her the vote right then and there. But I think as Commissioner Kaya or Commissioner Mayfield and I have shared before, the grant writing is part of it. When you do work with the legislature, you're just throwing sand in the wind, and you have really no idea, where it's going to land afterwards, and then the governor can veto it. So, there's no question that the world has changed after Ian. I mean, it's the 9/11 of Florida politics. I mean, everything has changed. So I guess in order to proceed, I might offer or ask the mayor to further define what you think would be an appropriate list or timetable, because that seems to be a bottleneck of us moving with the next step. And I think we're kind of on the same page as far as the need for something like this. The other proposal to me just seemed very generic. I mean, you get $3,000 a month for what? I mean, the response from the other proposal was, a game plan of meetings and a sequence, and to me it was broken down in more logical game plan. So, but I still think that we need to capture what you've been saying apoplectically. Is that the word of the day? I like that. So I share that, and I think that's, I've heard you say that, and I want to add my voice to yours. What would you say might be a way that we can incorporate that into the execution of this type of agreement so that we could proceed?
I think what I'm looking for is we all recognize most of the agencies that are involved here, whether it be DEO, DEP, DOT, or whatever. Each of those agencies has separate programs that they're providing grants for, and we have appropriations as a subset to that. What I don't understand is what those programs are for those specific agencies, when the deadlines are for them, when the deadlines are for appropriations. Appropriations, I think, are really a very critical thing here that we look at, because if you get one appropriation, there's an opportunity for it to be a recurring appropriation. So if you get a road work appropriation, the next year it's easier to get it kind of renewed, I'll say. But I don't know what those specific programs are, what the deadlines are. You know, you're the guy, and I'm also the guy now who resents having things brought to them an hour before they're due. Well, what's to prevent that from happening again? I don't see anything that's going to prevent that from happening again, because we don't know. I mean, if I have a list of programs and what the deadlines are for them, you know, I can torture the town manager and say, where is this application? Who's working on it? When's it going to be done? I don't have that right now. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, to those points, and particularly about the appropriations, with my experience in the past with doing it, that seems like a just a yearly thing, and you're not, I think it would be hard to prepare something ahead of time about the appropriations request. It's kind of like, we decide what we need, and then you ask for it, and she can correct me on that. So that would be, that's not something, that's a little more moving parts. But the grants
But I
from,
assume there's deadlines on our appropriation requests.
oh, yeah.
And I don't know
Yeah.
what they are, but I assume they're coming up, they have to be in before the 1st of January, before session starts, I would assume.
Right.
I don't know if anybody's working on them or what we're doing on them. I don't have any idea.
And then my other part to that comment is, you know, when you're asking for a list of the grants that are out there, and I think that's an excellent request, and I get it too, because they're all out there, and it's all very nebulous and mysterious. What are they? Where are they from? And there's no great database to go at to look at it. So I agree. And so I would ask Chloe, because she's probably the most experienced in this group with grants, what is the real challenge of getting a list of that for the grants specifically, probably from the agencies or whatever? Is it that there's no big database to draw from, that you would specifically have to go to each agency and ask, are they always changing? Like, what is the real challenge to get a list of grants that are available at any given moment?
So there is no challenge. So we separate it federal and state. So let's focus on states. This is where grant writing to me and lobbying efforts is completely intertwined, which you won't find a lot of people who do both. A lot of lobbyists are well aware of the grant opportunities, but they're not necessarily grant writers. Most of the state agencies through the budget, so it's through the whole legislative session where you're lobbying in for those state budgets to look like they do. They then will disseminate pots of money into different projects and different things that they want. So I know I had a great meeting with Mr. Daniels where he strategized about parks grants, and it was genius, especially with some of our projects, not just on a parks end, but also on land acquisition and stormwater treatment. And so when I went to go look, because this is the first time I was introduced to this concept and these potential projects with you all, most of the deadlines had passed June and July, like immediately after the session and the budget money dropped. And there were about 1 or 2 left that were a little bit harder far-fetched, but there were some really good ones. So we would have to wait until the next budget cycle to see, but they're usually pretty similar pots of money. They might be a little bit different. And then DEP, it's the same concept where they have different buckets of money, and every year they look a little bit different, and they might have a little bit less or a little bit more, but like you said, they're often recurring to some degree, and then they'll set dates accordingly, and then those dates are. So with my experience with you all, I've been heavily focused on coastal resiliency, and so working with the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, and so that was where we went to. And then also, I'd also like to put with the other projects, specifically the septic to sewer project that was really last minute, that I think was an issue of the concept and the spark went off too late, where I was introduced to the project about 2 weeks earlier, and then after strategizing with our town engineer, it occurred to me that that could fall completely under coastal resiliency money too, which is a really good match opportunity for you all to keep that cost really low for residents. And so in a last minute effort, I said, let's go after it and let's just see what happens, because there's so much money. And so that's why I put all my energy together, and I 4 days I helped put that project together for coastal resiliency. And I understand on your end that's extremely last minute, and I apologize for that, but I wanted to make sure that if there's actually a project out there, that you guys are keeping the cost as low as possible by going after as much. So I think when it comes to projects, I could easily put together, generally what the state agencies disperse, we would have to wait till the next session to see the exact specific dates for the new buckets of money, because most of them are closing out. And then federal grants are tricky because they update every 2 to 3 weeks. And so I just constantly search for federal grants. And then often federal grants will come out and then they'll disseminate to the state agencies, which kind of gets annoying because you'll see a big grand vice president or president announcement about this huge $2 billion worth of infrastructure, but then you have to wait for that to get disseminated accordingly to the states, and then the Department of Emergency Management will disseminate that months later. So there, for instance, there is one big one about infrastructure that's going to go through the state DEM, so I'm waiting for that to come out so that I can show you all what that looks like and what the dates are on that. So federal and state are a little bit different. State is easier to kind of pinpoint what we're going to have. Federal, you got to go with the flow. Every couple weeks, you get some new announcements.
Commissioner Fender, I'm sorry, I didn't see your light on. Do you have anything you'd like to add here?
You're a little muffled. Can you repeat that, please?
Has faith in Chloe, that's all I heard.
We're trying our best with technology here. I apologize.
I think he said he's going to buy everyone a round of drinks after the meeting. That's what I heard.
Vice Mayor Kurzman.
Yeah, pretty much, what we hear from the commission is we want lists, we want updates. If you could give us a list, as I said before, that would help.
Sure.
What we would like to do is review everything. Like if you could come in advance, like a week before the meeting, give us a list at least a week ahead, so we have time to think things over, read it over. And this, you'd come to a meeting, this way the commissioners could get more information from you
Absolutely.
on these different grants, because we're going to have questions on them. So what's available and how it affects us, what it's going to cost us, what the matching is, and how we can match with other grants, et cetera. The other thing is, I do like the idea of having the grant writer and the lobbyist as being one of the same. This way, I know there's not going to be a communication breakdown. What's going to happen is if you have a lobbyist, then they tell the grant writer, this is what we need, and something is lost over there, well, he didn't mention this or whatever. I think that's an advantage that really goes to our favor, and I felt you did a good job at getting us a lot of money in grants, the most we've ever seen, and I give you a lot of credit for that, for being the new kid on the block at that time. So I think you did a great job, and I have a lot of confidence in you. And I think the main part, I think what everybody's looking for right now is just better, not that you did better communication, but we need great communication. So we know exactly how to organize ourselves. There's just so many balls in the air. We just need a little bit more infrastructure so that we could put this together. And the only way to put it together is we would definitely need something in advance explaining what's available, gives us a chance, and you, like I said, we're going to go by your recommendation because you know our needs now. Mm-hmm. And at that point, it would go through our staff. Our staff would then bring it to us, and we'd go with the suggestion from there.
Mr. Daniels, you have something to add?
Yeah, not to belabor the point on the grants, but on the federal side too, with FEMA grants, every time we have a catastrophe like we had with Ian, you know, there will be grants that will come out again to help mitigate future damages. And I realize that, you know, the sediment of, you know, a lot of money needs to go into the southwest part of our state, just like it went up to the Panhandle when they had to rebuild up there. But there's a lot of resiliency, a lot of mitigation that we have to do even in our town. And that's why we look at sea level rise. We look at the flooding issues. We look at all of those issues that we can't address unless we have that grant money. And I think, that's why FEMA and the federal government outlines that money, because it's a lot cheaper if we take care of those situations now than you're dealing with it later on down the road when something does happen and we do get hit with a bad hurricane and the flooding is horrific. So any of those things that we can try to do to mitigate now and in the future is going to make us a more resilient community. And I think that's one of the importance. So the key is really grant writing, and just on some of the other storms that we've had that have affected the state, it's a lot of that funding becomes regional. So it might not be available FEMA funding in Michigan when we have a hurricane that's in the Panhandle, but it might be available for us here in Florida. And as Chloe said, the money kind of funnels, even though it's federal money, it funnels to the Department of Emergency Management. So could be dealing with the same people that we've dealt with on state grants, but they're using federal money to fund projects that we have. So I know that makes it probably more confusing for you, but it just means that a lot of those federal dates are moving targets. And even though, we might have had a hurricane 2 years ago, there's still grant funding available through FEMA under that hurricane number or subsection or whatever. Did I do that justice?
Yeah, and I think what's also really awesome is you guys hired a town manager who really, really understands this whole process, legislative and agency-wise. So I think just from our initial interactions, I know there was a lot of deadlines at the beginning of his start that we were meeting, and then now he's already giving this clear direction and introducing all of these concepts. So I think that was a huge missing link that's now here. And so on my end, I can absorb what you all need and definitely do a better job at making sure that's communicated timely, consistently, and clearly.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I think this conversation has certainly showed that grants are a big deal to us and that we don't fully grasp it all and that we need more information. And you're the one offering grant writing without having to go through another consultant to get to our grant writers. And obviously we have our town manager who's very capable, but he has a lot of other hats to wear too. So I think that's an important point. And maybe she could provide the information that we desire and you so greatly desire, Mayor. I desire too, so I am with you.
I've calmed down a little bit. Do we have a motion? Is there any more discussion? Do we have a motion? Is the term of the contract a year? Mr. Daniels, or is it-
It's been a while since I've read through it, but I believe it's a year renewable for another year after that, I believe. So, usually on the lobbyist contracts, they come due every year. Usually you don't have a multi-year agreement. I mean, it's nice, they'd like to do that, but you want to have them prove themselves that they can get accomplished what they want to get, what they can. Now, keep in mind, we had the Parkland shooting that occurred a few years ago, and a lot of the money that was earmarked that was going to go to different projects obviously went to school security, other topics of importance to our communities throughout the state. So, not that I'm wishing anything catastrophic like that to occur, but you can't really fault a lobbyist because they worked real hard, and and we all have to work with the lobbyists too and make some phone calls and do the things that we need to do on a local level. But we could do all that and end up that something happens, or the governor decides to veto it. I think Commissioner Campo, you had mentioned that for some reason it doesn't fit that agenda. So, it's really, you have to really have a lot of fortitude to be a lobbyist, I think, so.
Commissioner Campo.
So I think there's a lot that we agree to, and in order to kind of push this into a motion, I'm going to ask this question again, and that is, what precisely would the mayor like the first order of business for the consultant to be? And it sounds like we could make a motion and execute this agreement with the mayor's suggestion being the first order of business which would be, fill in the blank. I mean, I think you can articulate that, but that might be a way for us to execute and secure the representation that we're looking for, and to keep the ball rolling so that we don't miss any opportunities, but make sure that first and foremost, the list that you're looking for is the first order of business. And then if that doesn't materialize to the degree that you're looking for, then we end the contract after 1 month. But I think you're right in asking that, and I'd just like for you to more fully articulate, what you're looking for so that Chloe could then come back to us, and hopefully that would be your first order of business. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's fine, and, I do recognize that, Chloe was instrumental in the $3.5 million that we got several months ago, and how critical that was to, Phase 3. So I'm not trying to, pick on you.
I absolutely don't think that.
And I'd certainly be willing to go along with that. Just, do you have an idea what I'm looking for now?
Absolutely, and you'll have
Okay.
it by the end of the week.
Okay, well, that's fine. And I have no problem with, proceeding based on that.
Okay. Then I'll move approval.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry?
Mr. Torsivi has a,
I was only going to ask if, when you make the motion, could you include that, I may have to make a couple of little tweaks, and I'll go with Chloe on this, because this is pretty clear, and even terminated on 5 days' notice, but if I need to have any tweaks to, make it comply, is that okay?
sure.
If that's
Okay.
part of the motion?
Okay, so the motion should include that there might be some legal adjustments made to the contract before we execute it?
Thank you.
Thanks. See, I'm listening.
And can I consider that a motion?
Yes.
Okay, do we
I'll
have
second it.
a second? Any further discussion? Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield,
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman,
Yes.
Commissioner Campo,
Aye.
Commissioner Fender.
All right, that brings us to, let's see, item, we have no ordinances, second reading or first reading, no resolutions. That brings us to old business, which is item 10. And 10A is the town manager performance goals. We had discussion on this, I think, a couple of meetings ago. We made some adjustments to it, and I'd like to open up the discussion if anybody wants to make any further revisions or modifications or additions. We can talk about it now and perhaps get it going. Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes, I think I said it last time, but I just wanted to say thank you again for spearheading this and getting it done, because I think it's important, and I know from being mayor before, things kind of fall in your lap, and so I appreciate the effort put into it, because I think it's good for all of us and the town manager to have these goals written, so thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments or questions about the performance goals? Commissioner Campo?
Yeah, the only one that I have is especially with what we just took care of, is that the legislative process is February, March. By the time the governor flies around and signs each bill in every different city with children and puppies behind them, it takes a while. So my only, about halfway down, develop proposals, cost estimates for septic to sewer. I don't know about the first quarter, because I think a lot of that's going to be dependent upon what happens in the legislature. So I might just strike out the time frame in general, or maybe say second quarter.
Well, I think, I believe what we were looking for there was that, Captech had subcontracted with the name escaping me at the moment, to do the evaluation of the potential scenarios. And Captech was working on a kind of a summary report on that that would be, simplified for us to take a look at. And that's what we were talking about there. And I think Captech is, has got that, in kind of draft form, and will probably come back to us in the next, next month. Joe, is that a good number? So I think we will be in a position to at least discuss the, potential scenarios and cost estimates see how we want to proceed with it.
Okay.
I'll make a motion to, whoops, sorry, I meant to press my button. I'll make a motion to approve the town manager performance goals.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Fender? Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
That brings us down to discussion items. What's becoming an oldie but goodie is the town commission meeting time. I guess, Mr. Kurzman, Vice Mayor Kurzman, you're going to lead us on this item.
Yeah, I do like the idea of keeping it at a stable time, but with notice. I didn't feel it was fair for James before, it's just because he brought up a good point. It affects his schedule, and he is a major part of this commission. And I feel it's only fair that we're all here and with notice, and this way he could arrange his schedule. I do like the idea of keeping it at 6 o'clock. I feel 5:30 is too early, and when you wake up sometime as early as 4 in the morning to come in at 7 at night, and sometimes don't get out here until after 11, it's a very long day. So I think, at least I know it's always going to be 6 o'clock, but it's the only thing that I would allow for is to see, give some notice so James could at least rearrange his schedule on his other committees that he has. And when would be a good date where we could make it all 6 o'clock for you, James? I want to put everybody on the same page.
Well, thank you. I think I appreciate the respect. I've got a fourth Tuesday of October. Other than that, our November and December meetings have been changed from the fourth Tuesday. So I would be good with it changing anytime after October.
So effective in November, does that work for you, Frank?
Commissioner Fender?
Okay, and Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes. Yep.
Mayor? So you said after October, and then so effective the November meetings, we make all the meetings start at 6 PM sharp.
Okay, so the second meeting in November would still be, in October would still be at 7 o'clock, and after that it'd be 6 o'clock.
Yeah.
You get a motion?
I'll make a motion that we start the meetings effective in November at 6 PM.
I'll second.
Just a point of discussion that as much communication as we can have to the community, that things that have been the same for a long time are now changing, if we can get that record out.
Definitely.
Great.
Please call the roll.
Commissioner Mayfield?
Yes.
Mayor Tompeck?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Kurzman?
Yes.
Commissioner Campo?
Aye.
Commissioner Fender?
Mr. Mayor, if I may, just to remind everybody on the consent agenda, we had changed to one meeting in November and one meeting in December. And also for those of you that are listening, so we'll be doing the first meeting in November and the first meeting in December. And we will not have a second meeting because of the conflicts with the holidays. So just so everybody's,
They will both be at 6 o'clock.
and they'll both be at 6 o'clock.
Great.
We can do that out as one message, so.
Okay, that brings us down to item 12C, which is land development regulations. This was an item that I had requested to be put on the agenda from the standpoint that I wanted to understand, specifically the LDRs that required change based on the updated comprehensive plan. So I think I appreciate what you put together, and maybe Bonnie can come up. I'm sorry, I don't want to
No, that's fine.
go ahead of you here, but if Bonnie would come up and go ahead with her presentation, I'd appreciate it.
All right, we'll just give them time to queue it up. Okay. So again, the mayor had requested that we provide an overview, and I think it's a good idea that we're talking about it today, because before we start drafting, I need to get some input from you of where you'd like to see the changes and how you'd like to see the changes. So I think it's a good time to do it, and then hopefully we'll have something to you in November that we can start actually implementing. So, the land development regulations, why are we doing this? We talked about it as we were doing the comp plan amendments, and according to state statute 163, comprehensive plans have to match your LDRs, and there were some things changed in the comp plan. Do we have the PowerPoint?
Yes, I sent it.
I don't think it's on that screen, right?
I can go without it. I can go without it. It's fine. Some of the things that didn't match the comp plan and other things that we noticed along the way. I have it. Thank you. So one of the things you need to know initially is the LDRs were written in the 1970s. That was before your comp plan was written. And some of the policies or procedures in your LDR have never been updated. So this is a natural next step to making sure your comp plan matches your LDRs. So what needs to be updated? One of the things that we found along the way is the development review process is still from the 1970s, including the fees. So we need to look at streamlining the development review process and looking at the fees to make sure they're current fees, not fees from the 1970s, because you want to be able to pay for that process. One of the key things that is related to the comp plan update is the accessory dwelling units. Some of the things we heard during the comp plan is we might want to consider a maximum size of the guest house, because right now the way it's written in the comp plan is it can't be any larger than 50% of the main home. Well, if you have a very large main home, it could be a very large cottage. It doesn't have to be done, but it's something you should think about, whether, if you want to limit the size. The other thing to consider with guest houses is right now in the LDR, you may not have one by right, meaning if you want a guest house, you have to rezone your property to have the residential estate zoning. What I heard throughout the comp plan process is we want to make it easy for people to have a guest house so that they can accommodate maybe members of their family, to take care of them, such as an elderly parent. So if your direction is that we want to make it easy and we don't want to actually have to come to the commission for permission to get a guest house, I can make that change. Any thoughts on that, on the process? Or do you want to think about it?
It's up to you. If you want.
Because that is a policy decision. My recommendation is to make it easy. But if you want them to go through a separate step, that is a policy decision from the commission.
Mr. Mayfield?
Yes, I think if it's something that we all agree on, and it seems like added government waste to just go through it every time and have it brought to the commission. That's my opinion.
And I was curious about the maximum size. You were talking about 50% of the original dwelling, but I assume there's still the overall restriction about how much of the property can be built on, period.
That's
right?
true. You have to have an open space, and that's correct. So that would control some of that. It was just one comment that was made by a member of the public, and I wanted to make sure you didn't want to add that restriction to avoid any large homes. And what size, I'm thinking, 1,200, 1,500 square foot as a place to start, or we can just leave it at 50% of the original structure.
I'm good at 50%.
I'm good at 50%, as,
Okay.
certainly with the restriction about the overall.
Yeah, we'd have to reference the current code where it talks about how much of the lot can be used for a structure.
No, and I think that's a very good point. Some of that's controlled by other regulations, and it would just be adding a layer. So we can leave it at that, and if it becomes a problem, we can address it in the future. Also, one of the things some municipalities have is design standards for that guest house, to have some regulations that say it needs to be similar to the main structure, so it blends into that lot. Right now, we don't have that. So I could draft something up for your review on that. And then one thing that is just a cleanup is we're going to remove any reference to servants' quarters because it's an antiquated term, and we don't have servants. So if we do move forward with guest houses being done as a right, I would recommend getting rid of the residential estate zoning district. Every residential property in the town has the R1 zoning. There are no residential estate zoning districts here. And it's just something that we don't need, because if we're going to eliminate that rezone requirement, we don't need that zoning district.
What was the original intent of that, do you know?
I don't know the original intent, but I know that the main purpose of having that zoning district was so that you could have a guest house.
Okay.
Meaning, right now, everybody in Sewalls Point doesn't really have the right to have a guest house because they don't have the residential estate zoning district. It requires a rezone. So if you're getting rid of that, you can get rid of the zoning district. And the size of the lots are governed by other regulations. Another item that was brought up many times during the comprehensive plan was the extension of River Road. That was in both your comp plan and your LDR. It was in your LDR before it was in your comp plan because the requirement was written in 1977 and your comp plan was written in 1989. We had extensive public comments about removing that requirement for development. And I did have an illustration, which we can't put up there, but there are two locations where that would be required when those two lots are built. And so that is one of the things I'm recommending we change. I also talked about fees. Some of the fees are from the 1970s, 1980s. We need to update that. We're going to revise the subdivision process to make it very clear how you do a lot merger, how you do a lot split. And there are some exemptions that for smaller subdivisions that I'm going to recommend you take out, and I'll provide that language when it's time. Zoning in progress, we just talked about it, I think, at the last meeting. I think it's important for future reference to have a laid out process so that it will be smoother the next time if you ever have to do that process again. And it's just giving you a process to follow and a time frame for when that would become active, meaning in the city of Stewart, as soon as they advertise, it's active, even before they vote on it. And it avoids any people trying to get in last minute applications when you're trying to update your LDR, for example. So I'll draft that process for your review. Development review process, as I mentioned before, when we were reviewing the Banyan Hill Estates application and other applications, we found very strict timelines. For example, it gives staff 10 days to review an application, which is not typical at all, because it's not just myself, it's your town engineer is reviewing that application. So I'm going to recommend a more appropriate timeline and look at the fee schedule, which I believe was updated with, when we updated the fees with building department, but I'm just going to make sure those fees are updated. And by doing this, it's not going to just make it easier for the reviewers. It's going to make it easier for the applicants because there'll be a checklist for everything and a systematic way of approaching those applications. That concludes my summary. If you have any questions or direction you'd like to provide, in the meantime, we will begin drafting those. We did talk to your town attorney about how do we attack this apple. It would be wonderful if we could do one ordinance, but they recommend that we break it into separate ordinances, meaning like one ordinance for the subdivision changes, one ordinance for the ADUs, the accessory dwelling units. So there will be more than one ordinance you have to approve, but it's best practice legally that we do it that way, so we're going to listen to the attorney and do it that way. So you will see more than one ordinance advertised, and the other advantage of that is if you get caught up in one of them, it doesn't hold up the whole LDR process update. So And Glenn came in right when I was talking about him. You agree?
Yes.
We're going to break it up into logical pieces, and I'll work directly with the town attorney to draft those ordinances for your approval.
Hopefully as few pieces as possible.
We're going to try to package it as small as possible, but there are, different code sections that are changing. So do you have any initial thoughts about how you'd like to see it, or you want me to just draft it and bring it to you?
My thought would be that you go ahead and draft it and bring it to us.
Okay.
What I was concerned about was that what was the limit we put on the zoning and prog?
120 days.
Yeah, I wanted to make sure we got started on it so we wouldn't get to 120 days and have a problem.
I don't think we're going to have a problem. I mean, unless there's a lot of,
You've dealt with us long enough and you don't think you're going to have a problem.
I think it's going to be quite.
We appreciate that.
I think it's going to be very smooth and harmonious, yes. I always have the optimist view.
Okay, before we get to the commission, I do have a public comment form from Tony Dwyer.
Good evening. Tony Dwyer, 32 North River Road. I'm a little confused, right, section 78-112, the extension of River Road. It doesn't specify whether that's north or south. And the sentence as it's written is unclear for me. I don't understand it. The regulation was written in 1977. I don't know what regulation that was. Much has changed. This requirement to extend River Road was removed from the comprehensive plan based on public input. Now, what section of River Road are we referring to?
I was trying to remember, but I think it meant River Road, it wasn't differentiated between north and south, but it included both of them.
Okay, well,
Okay.
let's talk about one section then, and that is India Lucy, North River Road, and Knowles. India Lucy is India Lucy, Knowles is Knowles, never should they be the same. People bought their homes, at least I did, and I know a couple of other people bought their homes knowing that it was a dead-end street, and we got comfort in that. To extend it through to Knowles would deprive us of some privacy, and obviously add more traffic. But more importantly, I think, is the question of security. And I think that Tina would attest to this. And I'll give you two examples. One morning I went out early, 4 o'clock, putting out the garbage, and I see 4 young men in a Toyota Corolla creeping down the street, and they see me and they nailed it. They jumped on it, sped away, and I was able to get a portion of their license plate. They were from St. Lucie County. They got to the end of the street and they said, oh my God, they had to spin around. I got my car and followed them over the bridge. I lost them once they got into Stewart. I did call the Stewart police and try to give them a description of the car, but the big one was this. Before there was a building at 34 North River Road, which was next door to me, there was a vacant lot. My wife, Luann, came home from playing tennis and noticed that there was a car that she didn't recognize parked on the side of the road at 34 North River Road. And I was sitting at my desk in the kitchen, right by the kitchen, inside the garage door, interior garage door. The exterior garage door was open, and Luann walked in the garage, and there was a young man there, and she thought perhaps it was a friend of one of the children's, and she said, what are you doing here? And he said, I'm looking for my cell phone. And she said, no. Luann opens the door and said, dial 911 now. And I said, what am I calling for? She said, just do it. And she ran, the guy took off and she ran after him. And he drove down to the end of North River Road and had to turn around and pass her again. She got a description of the automobile. This is very important. She got a description of the automobile that was so vivid that the Sewalls Point Police and the Stewart Police had arrested this guy within 1 hour. When they went through his car, they found evidence of similar crimes, of other crimes. The guy was arrested, he was prosecuted, he was convicted, and we just got a notice the other day in the mail from the prosecutor that he was being let go. He did 13 years. 13 years, and it had not been for that dead end, there's a real possibility that he never would have been caught.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Tony.
You know, I also have another public comment form from Laura D. Berard. I'm sorry, I may have missed you earlier. If I, is it on this item?
This is my issue, yes.
Okay, please come up.
I'm Laura D. Berard, 37 North River Road. I have a question about what we're actually talking about, to tell you the truth. Does the comprehensive plan right now include the road at North River Road going through the estate?
No, the comprehensive plan took it out, and what we're trying to do here is to modify the LDRs to say the same thing.
Excellent. Well, then I'm in agreement with that. I was part of the initiative that took that off the comprehensive plan in the 80s. I was the vice president of the association at India Lucy. Dr. Young, Art Young, was the president, and we went door to door and collected the signatures that were required to take it off the comprehensive plan. And I'm expecting that it will remain that way and not be altered, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Laura. Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Daniels.
If I can just explain for the benefit of the listening audience and the audience that's here, when we talk about the comprehensive plan, that's the policy of the town and how we're going to exist for the next 7 years. And then it has to be updated again on 7-year increments. But, so that's the governing document, sort of, and then the actual regulations, which put the teeth into our code, that need to correspond with that. So when we talk about the extension of River Road, I think the intent was always, from this commission before I came here, excuse me, when they made those decisions, is to not to have it extend through those neighborhoods. So all we're doing now is just making sure through our planner that those regulations get implemented through an ordinance process and then come into our code so Jack knows what to deal with when they come on his desk. So didn't mean to simplify it, but that's just, when we talk LDRs, it's the land development regulations is what that really means. We get caught up on all these acronyms, and I'm used to federal acronyms like FBI and all that other stuff, so I'm kind of used to it, but I just wanted to take a minute and explain it.
Commissioner Mayfield.
Yes, I was just going to say, I think, Mayor, you said you had asked for this to be on the agenda, so I wanted to thank you for that, and Bonnie for giving the detail. This is like, with the conversation at the last meeting, just kind of the stuff I was looking for, the details of what the differences are and the changes getting made, so, thank you. She is.
Okay, any other comments? There's no motion or vote required on this.
No.
So if there's no further,
That's it.
okay, I guess we'll move on then. And we'll move on to staff closing comments. Mr. Daniels.
Yes. As was previously mentioned, we do have the 33rd annual contest that Premier Realty run. We also, our police department, I wasn't here for the last Halloween, obviously, but our police department goes out to, have their friendlier face on and making sure that we're all safe during this process as well. So I just wanted to give them a plug as we move forward. Also, I did get a notice from the Martin County Board of County Commissioners that they're doing the grand opening of Sailfish Sands, which is the golf course over on St. Lucie Boulevard in Stewart. That's going to be on Thursday, October 20th at 6 p.m. So they're inviting any residents or commission members that want to attend to come out. And I am, because of some conflicts that we had with the date for Breakfast with Bob, we have sent out the notice already, but you'll notice there'll be a change in the date. It's actually going to be Thursday, October the 20th at 9 o'clock right here in the chambers, 9 to 10. A light breakfast menu of bagels and donuts probably, and stuff that you probably don't want to eat on a normal diet, but and then just some conversation, some coffee and conversation with the residents, and obviously if any members of the commission want to come, we just need to make sure that April notifies the notice for the meeting, even though it's not a meeting technically, but since you're in attendance and we might be discussing things openly from concerns of the residents and so forth. But I've done this in other communities, and we're going to work on, a quarterly basis and see how well you all like it. And, if it ends up being a dud, then I tried something new. Thank you.
Okay, we need some, any comments from the commissioners? Commissioner Mayfield?
Yeah, just real quick, because we had a public comment about it, and Town Manager, you brought it up. I'm just curious, do you know, are they no longer doing the pumpkin carving contest?
No, they are. I'm sorry. It's in.
I didn't see it in there when I got it in the mail.
Um,
Our IT fellow is telling us no, Tom. I didn't see anything about pumpkins. I should have asked when she was here. I don't know if she's here.
I'm of the impression it is. Chief, do you know anything different?
They may have changed it, is that correct, Tom? They're doing a costume contest instead of...
Okay.
Yeah, so last year it was kind of a little bit of both, and
Okay.
costumes were
Yeah.
a really big hit with everybody. So there were some issues getting pumpkins with COVID and everything going on too, which was part of
Okay.
it, where we used to give everybody the free pumpkins.
Yeah.
So switched it to the costume contest
Okay.
now, which seemed to be a big hit, and we had a lot more interaction with the community with the costumes. So going with
Okay.
that.
Perfect,
Great.
thank you. That's what I was looking for.
I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, are there any other commissioner comments? If not, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion made.
We're adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Fender.